The NFL draft is done and over with. We've had a lot of our rookie drafts now. There's still some upcoming for people, but a bulk of them have already happened. And so now it is time to look at what are our overall rankings. So today I'm going to look at my top 36 ranked players. Now, this is not ADP. I'm not going based on what other people are doing. I'm going, who do I think are the top 36 most valuable super flex asset? Not one QB, not tight end premium, straight super flex assets. And it's going to start overall at the quarterback position. We've got Josh Allen, the 29-year-old guy that has been a quarterback one year after year after year after year. He has been a top 3 asset with multiple number 1 overall finishes at the position over the past 5 seasons. He has been an absolute stud for your fantasy football teams, and I expect that trend to continue. I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. He's still going to continue running. Yeah, eventually he'll run a little bit less as he gets into his 32, 33, but he's still got a good enough arm that he's still going to be a very good asset. But if there was somebody that was going to take his throne, I think this guy's in the same tier, a little bit younger, although he came out as an older rookie, and that's Jayden Daniels. I have Jayden Daniels here at 2. You want to put him at 1 over Josh Allen? I have no issue with it. You just worry sometimes about maybe there being a sophomore slump. We'll see how things go, but totally fine with either one of those two guys in the first or second spot. We've got another QB here at 3, and that's Jalen Hurts. Now, for me, if I'm in a draft and I'm in a super flex draft, I see the third player off the board, which for me is Jalen Hurts, and there's a few different guys you could argue here, all the way to like end of the first round, starting in the beginning of the second round as a very similar tier. So I would love to trade back, but you have to rank guys somewhere. And Jalen Hurts has shown us that he can be a top 3 option at the position over and over and over again. He's in a very good offense. He has a very good offensive line, good receivers, good running game. Everything is poised for him to continue to be a good fantasy asset for the long term. Even slightly younger than Josh Allen as well. So we know the longevity can be there as well. And yes, I get it. He gets a lot of tush-push touchdowns, but it's still legal. He's going to keep doing it. At 4, we've got Lamar Jackson. He was the number 1 overall scorer last year, and you could argue him all the way as high as the top spot. But we've seen him be a little bit more inconsistent, partly due to injuries and a few other things. But he's been a little bit more inconsistent than Josh Allen has. So I don't think he's quite up in that same tier. But if you want to argue it, I have literally no issue with him being ranked that high. At 5, we have our first position player, a player that has been a top 12 fantasy wide receivers for 4 straight seasons, which is almost unheard of. And that is Mr. Ja'Marr Chase. He is going to continue to be an asset, not an asset. He's an elite fantasy football player. He will carry your team to title at times. And I don't expect this Cincinnati Bengals defense to be that much better this season. So I still think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts, and a lot of that is going to go to Mr. Ja'Marr Chase. At 6, we hit our first running back. I've got Bijan Robinson. Now, had this been tight end premium, I probably would have had Brock Bowers somewhere in here. But with it not being tight end premium, I'm going to go with Bijan here at 6. Such an absolute stud. He's been a top 12 running back the past 2 seasons. He was a top 3 guy this past year, and he's still so young, has great volume, everything you look for in a dynasty back. At 7, Justin Jefferson. This seems almost too low, but there's just so many good assets right now at the top of these drafts. Justin Jefferson, the only thing that even makes me slightly hesitate is we just haven't seen him with J.J. McCarthy yet. I don't anticipate it being an issue. Justin Jefferson's been good with everybody. So I think he's going to continue being good with J.J. McCarthy. We just don't know how targets are going to be dispersed and blah, 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 blah. He's a first-round talent. Continue to take him high. I have him here at 7th overall. At 8, I'm going with Joe Burrow. So I talked about Ja'Marr Chase just a few picks earlier. Joe Burrow, the only thing that is a little bit worrisome is he has also seemed to have a tendency to get a little bit banged up at times and miss some time. But when he's on, he is on, and he gets so many yards through the air, so many opportunities to make some plays. And at times he'll show off a little bit of running ability and athletic ability as well. So Joe Burrow, that super flex asset, our 5th quarterback off the board here as the 8th overall player. At 9, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan, same tier. Even if you wanted to switch them, I wouldn't have any issue with it. The only difference is he doesn't have to share time with a David Montgomery where Jahmyr Gibbs does, but obviously that wasn't an issue when he was the number 1 overall running back last year. Love Jahmyr Gibbs. See what happens without Ben Johnson, but I anticipate them being just fine. At 10, I have C.D. Lamb. He is 1 year removed from being the number 1 overall wide receiver. Slight down year, but now they had George Pickens, and I know for some they're going to say that that's a down. No, that's not a down. That's still a very solid thing for him because now he finally gets some coverage pulled from him because all eyes were on him at all times. Now he has somebody else to take a little bit of that pressure off. At 11, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra just is so freaking consistent year after year after year after year, and I don't expect that to change. So I'm still in on Amon-Ra St. Brown. We mentioned just a second ago about the change in offensive coordinator. That does not worry me in the least. I still think that he is going to continue to be a top 6 fantasy football wide receiver. At 12, we have our quarterback 6. So half of the first round is quarterback, which is pretty common if you have done a startup recently. I have Patrick Mahomes here at 12. Yes, last year was a bit of a down year, but he's getting Rashee Rice back. And you saw that they at times needed to be able to air it out a little bit more, make some more big plays. And so I expect that to be a focal point of this offseason, assuming that the defenses allow for that in their coverage scheme. So Patrick Mahomes here at 12. At 13, almost ended up in the first round here. I've got the rookie Ashton Jeanty. Really don't have him in a different tier than the guys that I mentioned of Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. Same tier as those guys. Just hasn't proven it yet, but all signs point to him being an elite asset. He was a top 10 pick at the position, and he's going to be on a team with Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll that they're going to want to run the football a ton. They're going to give him the rock. He's going to have a monster year. At 14, Malik Nabers. I could easily see him passing CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I was even tempted to put him up there because of the youth. But once again, we have another situation with a new quarterback, new scheme. Well, Dable's still there, but we'll see how things play out. I anticipate if he just even shows a little bit in the first part of the year, I'll be bumping him up inside of my top 10. At 15, and this is kind of the end of that tier that I talked about, where 3, and you could almost just take whoever. I see all of these guys all the way up to Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers at 15 for me. I mentioned him earlier. I could see him as early as like 5 or 6 for me if it was tight end premium. Without that, I did move him down a little bit to 15, but even still, to take a tight end that early can be tough, but he is such a difference maker, and he is still so young. So I think it's a worthwhile pick at the 15th overall spot. At 16, we have Justin Herbert. He started last year off a little bit slow, but man, they really leaned into his strengths over the second half of the season, and he balled out. So Justin Herbert as QB7 here off the board at 16, and QB8 right after him, Caleb Williams. This is a bit of a projection. I know he has not proven it yet, but he has all of the tools to be a very good real-life quarterback and fantasy football quarterback. But now he also has the offensive mind, more weapons, and a greatly improved offensive line. There is no reason he should not be a top 10 fantasy football quarterback this season, and maybe we even see him sneak into the top 6. At 18, we've got Mr. Puka Nacua. All this guy does is perform. Every time he's on the field, he makes big plays happen. He did it his rookie year, and when healthy in year 2, he did the exact same thing. He kind of starts a run of receivers here that are kind of the next tier after Malik Nabers and up, but man, they're still really good. So the next one is Nico Collins. He's here at wide receiver 7 for me. What a talent he is. Unfortunately, he had the injury last year, but when healthy, was an absolute stud. I see him still being the main focal point, especially with the injury to Tank Dell and the rookies coming in. He's going to be the focal point of this offense. At 20, I have Drake London, and I almost considered him putting him above Nico and Puka. Loved what he did last year. Looked good in his short time with a Michael Penix. I anticipate that being a very good marriage for a very long time. Love his skill set, love his game, love that he's still a young asset. So I'll take Drake London as my 20th player. And we keep the wide receivers going because there's so many good ones in this range here. At wide receiver 9, the 21st player off the board, Jackson Smith-Njigba. This might be a little high for some people compared to where they have him, but this guy was a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 9 overall last year, simply with DK Metcalf there. With him gone, I get Cooper Kupp's involved, but I expect him to play even better. He's going to get even more targets. He only had 6 touchdowns last year. He was 30th in target rate last year. I expect that to go up. A guy that scores the 9th most points usually isn't the 30 most projected or targeted player. So I expect that number to grow a little bit, and I expect his production to grow as well. I have Brian Thomas here. Brian Thomas, very, very talented wide receiver. Once again, same tier as Puka, Nico, Drake, all those guys. Could have easily had him as my wide receiver 6. He falls to 10. Just not sure how long-term things work out exactly with Travis Hunter, but I still expect him to be a fantasy football wide receiver 1, more or less year in and year out. Drake May here at 23, maybe a little bit high for some people, but what he did with arguably the worst supporting cast last year was really impressive. Now you get him a top 5 pick at offensive tackle, which is a huge upgrade. They get him the great pass protector and pass catcher in Travion Henderson in the 2nd round, and then a very good, smooth wide receiver in Kyle Williams. They also added Stephon Diggs. Hopefully that works out. We'll have to wait and see, but adding Stephon Diggs too, they did a lot of things that you should do when you have a young asset like a Drake May. So for me, Drake May, quarterback 9 off the board, player 23 off the board. And finishing up our 2nd round, we would have Garrett Wilson here, wide receiver 11, 24th player off the board. Look, I know that you're going to say, well, Justin Fields gave DJ Moore his best season as a pro, and I think he could do the exact same thing for Garrett Wilson. There's not any target competition there right now. He's going to be getting all of the looks, and he's going to do a lot of good things with it. Garrett Wilson, 24, feel very good about that. Slipping right outside the 2nd round into the first pick of the 3rd round, we have wide receiver 12. So 12, almost half of our top 25 players, wide receivers here. Marvin Harrison Jr., yes, year 1 wasn't as amazing as we all expected it to be, but it's still a pretty good list of players that have had over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns in their rookie campaigns. He had a very good rookie season, and it looks like he's put in a lot of work this offseason. I expect him to ball out and everybody be like, what? Why? What was this his rookie year? Yeah, he's a good player. Just some guys don't become superstars the second they hit the field. They need a little bit of time. A guy that played a lot like him, and Devontae Adams, it took him a couple years. Marvin Harrison will be just fine. At 26, this is a player that would be a little bit higher in tight end premium, but still had to get him here. Trey McBride, he's just such a difference maker at the position, and there's so few of them right now, especially with youth on their side. So Trey McBride, the other Arizona Cardinal here at 26. The 10th quarterback off the board, Jordan Love with the 27th pick. I really like Jordan Love. Last year was a bit of a down year, but quarterbacks that have finished as a top 6 quarterback before have a 70% chance to repeat that, and I think Jordan Love can do that. We saw that in his 2023 season. I expect him to be right up in that conversation in 2025. At 28, we have another rookie off the board, Omarion Hampton, the running back out of UNC. He's now playing for the Chargers. Year 1 might not be as prolific as we would hope, but I think long-term, he is in the perfect offense with a good offensive line that is going to help him just be an absolute monster. 15, 16, 1,700-yard rushing seasons are not out of the question in his future. So love Omarion Hampton for the Chargers. At 29, we have Baker Mayfield. I know that there's some of you that are going to say this is way too high. Well, we also just saw him with 2 good seasons in a row, and this year as a top 6 fantasy football asset at the quarterback position. Same offense, same players. In fact, they added an additional player, and he was doing all that while missing Chris Godwin for half the season. Baker Mayfield is set up for great fantasy success, and I think this is stealing getting him here. But honestly, most leagues, 29, you're not going to have to get him until closer to 35, 40. So right now, Baker Mayfield is a great value. At 30, we have Saquon Barkley. I get that he's a little bit older, but the 29-year-old, soon to be 29-year-old, he's my running back 5. Had an incredible year last year. They signed that new contract, even though it wasn't necessary. They gave him that brand new deal with all of that money. And seeing a guy like Derrick Henry at his age signing big deals and still performing gives us a lot of hope that Saquon Barkley will be much the same. My 31st ranked player off the board, we have Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey tied for the wide receiver 12 last year with Jerry Jeudy, and they really didn't add a lot of receiving threats as well. Yes, Trey Harris will be there, but I think still the bulk of the targets are going to be going Ladd McConkey's way. We have our 12th quarterback off the board, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, he's lost a little bit of luster over the years, but he's still a very good fantasy asset. And it took some time for them to get used to each other last year, but I think this offense is going to take a step forward this coming year, especially with the emergence of a Marvin Harrison Jr. And so I think that's going to allow Kyler Murray to still be a very fantasy relevant player. And for dynasty purposes, he's still fairly young, so you're going to get a lot of good years out of Kyler Murray. At 34, Devon Achane. There was a time that I would have ranked him a little bit higher. And the receiving game is just awesome. He's very, very good in the receiving game, but I do worry about the rushing game. Are they going to pull back on that a little bit? And will that be enough to just have him drop a little bit? So I have him here as my RB6. Player number 33, Devon Achane. Player number 34, A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, he's been so good for so long. He's turning 28, which has soured him to some people, but there's still a lot of good years left. If you would have gotten Devontae Adams when he was 28, if you would have gotten Mike Evans when he was 28, Cooper Kupp when he was 28, all these guys had so many productive seasons after that time. I think we're going to get the same thing with A.J. Brown. I have him here at 34. At 35, the last quarterback that we're going to talk about, Brock Purdy, is QB 13 overall for me. Really like this player quite a bit. He's got that new deal now that really insulates his value as well. And the last player, Rashee Rice, wide receiver 15. He's the 36th player off the board. And this guy was poised to be one of those top 10 type receivers. And then the injury happened. But all signs point to him being healthy again and him being able to produce at a very high level. So, guys, that wraps up my top 36 fantasy football assets for Superflex leagues. Who do you guys have inside your top 36 that I missed, and who would you boot out?